Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we break down the complex world of corporate finance, and today we're diving into AST SpaceMobile's latest report. Let's just say things are getting interesting and maybe a little bit expensive. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, if you like decoding these fascinating documents with us, hit that subscribe button. And for more real-time insights and to join the conversation, check out our Discord server linked in the description below. So AST SpaceMobile Incorporated is the company we're looking at today, and this report is all about some recent financial maneuvers they've made. Think of it as a big financial update, telling us about some important happenings. Now, a really key thing to note is their class a common stock. This is essentially the ownership pieces of the company that are publicly traded on the Nasdaq stock market. It is how regular folks like you and me can invest in and own a tiny part of AST SpaceMobile. The heart of this particular filing really boils down to something called option notes. And basically, the company has been doing some borrowing, and this report details how that borrowing, or in this case, the option to borrow more, has progressed. Let's rewind a little bit to understand this. Back on the 17th of February of 2026, AST SpaceMobile Incorporated had already taken out a pretty significant loan, a whopping $1 billion in what they call convertible senior notes. Now, these aren't just plain old loans, they have a special feature. They can be converted into shares of the company's stock. And they carry a relatively low interest rate of 2.25%. This happened through a private sale, meaning it wasn't offered to the general public on the open market right away. But here is where the option part comes in. Just a couple of days later, on the 19th of February, the original buyers, the initial purchasers as they're called, decided they wanted to buy even more notes. They exercised an option that they had, which allowed them to purchase an additional $75 million worth of these same convertible notes. This is what they're calling the option notes. And finally, on the 20th of February, the company officially sold these extra $75 million in option notes. So in essence, they took on more debt, but in a way that was pre-agreed upon when they first took out the bigger loan. So after this whole process, AST SpaceMobile Incorporated now has a total of $1,075 million worth of these convertible notes outstanding. That is a substantial amount of money. It means they've taken on a lot of debt, and if these notes are converted, it could lead to a significant increase in the number of shares available. Now, let's talk about what happens if these notes are converted into stock. Based on the terms, up to approximately 11.1 million shares of their class of common stock could be issued. This is based on a conversion rate where each $1,000 of debt can turn into about 10.3 shares. This is important because if a lot of these notes are converted, it can dilute the value of existing shares. Dilution means that the pie gets bigger, so each existing slice or share becomes a smaller piece of the whole company. The way these option notes were sold is interesting. They were issued under a specific exemption in securities law, Section 4, at 2. This basically means they weren't offered to the general public, which is a way for companies to raise funds without going through all the rigorous registration processes required for a public offering. It is a common way for big institutional investors to buy into companies, and these initial buyers then resold these notes to what are known as qualified institutional buyers. These are basically very large institutions like big investment funds that meet certain financial thresholds. This again points to the fact that this wasn't a typical retail investment. Now, whenever a company is dealing with significant financial transactions like this, they often bring in legal experts to make sure everything is on the up and up. In this case, AST SpaceMobile Incorporated got opinions from a law firm called Freshfields US LLP. They essentially reviewed the legality of issuing and selling these shares, which is a good sign that the company is being diligent about following the rules. The actual legal framework for these notes is an indenture, a formal contract. This one, dated the 17th of February 2026, is between AST SpaceMobile Incorporated and US Bank Trust Company, acting as the trustee. The trustee's job is to make sure both the company issuing the notes and the people holding the notes are treated fairly according to the agreement, and the actual document representing this debt is the form of global note. This is the official certificate that details the terms of these 2.25% convertible senior notes that are due in 2036. Think of it as the physical, or in this case, digital representation of the debt. So, what does all this mean for AST SpaceMobile Incorporated? On one hand, they've successfully raised a significant amount of capital, which can be crucial for growth, especially if they're in an industry that requires a lot of investment, like space technology. The low interest rate is also a positive. However, they are taking on a considerable amount of debt, and the potential for dilution if the notes are converted into stock is a real factor to watch. It suggests the company is looking for ways to fund its operations and expansion, but it comes with the inherent risks of increased leverage and potential shareholder dilution. The fact that they are relying on private placements and sales to qualified institutional buyers tells us they are targeting sophisticated investors who understand the risks involved. It is a strategy that can work well, but it is not for the faint of heart, and it means the company is betting on its future growth to a significant degree to manage this debt. Alright, that is our breakdown of AST SpaceMobile Incorporated's latest filing. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments if this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.